Okay, this video is Pandora's box from Greek mythology is like what medical test? Okay, so first of all, a question. This is a radiology joke. What is the definition of a healthy person? Somebody who hasn't had a body CT yet. Okay, so what's a body CT? That's a CAT scan of the chest, abdomen, and pelvis. All right, especially the chest and the abdomen. Okay, and why is it? Why is that a joke to people who are familiar with the topic? Because incidentalomas are super common. Incidentalomas means you find something that's probably nothing, probably a whole lot of nothing, but you feel obligated to work it up because it's possibly a cancer. Okay, so the majority of people have little micro nodules in their lungs. So those are nodules like 4 millimeters or less, usually subpleural in the peripheral location. And almost for sure they're benign, but you always say, well, it could be a cancer. And so a radiologist will look at hundreds and hundreds of these. They don't want to miss any cancer. So even though the risk of it being a cancer might be 1 out of 100, it's going to get followed, okay? And if it's a ground glass nodule, a standard solid nodule will typically be followed for 2 years, a ground glass nodule for potentially much longer than that, potentially 4 or 5 years, okay? It depends. Anyways, and it's not just these lung micronodules. It's also low-density lesion in the liver. Okay, it's probably a cyst, could be a cancer. You can get an MRI, you can get a CT, you can get an ultrasound. Liver possible enhancing lesion. Maybe it's a THAD, transient hepatic attenuation defect, all this kind of stuff. Kidney lesion, possibly a cancer, complicated cyst. It goes on and on. There's tons of these. There's tons of them, okay? Atypical kidney cyst, adrenal nodule, splenic lesion, thickened loop of small bowel, thickened loop of large bowel, could be cancer, thickened esophagus, thickened colon, pancreatic head cyst, could be, a benign cyst, but it could be a cancer. Get a pancreatic CT, get an MRCP, MRI of the pancreatic head, borderline size retroperitoneal lymph nodes, get a follow-up, potential bone lesion, get a follow-up. Okay, so you can very quickly get stuck in a lot of follow-ups. So what I'm saying is even if somebody offers you a free screening CAT scan of the lung, you might get stuck with follow-ups, multiple follow-ups over the course of 2 or more years, and sometimes you'll have to pay for that out of pocket. It could be a lot of money. Okay, also it's a lot of grief. If you're worried about, oh, maybe I got cancer, patient doesn't really know the odds, then, they put their whole life on hold. Oh, I can't, do all these things because I might have cancer. So what am I saying here is I think it really comes down to pretest probability. Okay, a few other things. What is the myth of Pandora? Pandora comes from the story of Prometheus. Prometheus means for in advance, so it means forethought. And Prometheus was a great friend of mankind, and he had done mankind a favor by stealing fire from Zeus and giving it to man. But Zeus was pissed off about that, and he decided to get revenge on Prometheus. So as a trick, he knew that Prometheus had a brother named Epimetheus. So epi means like afterwards or on top of, so afterthought is Epimetheus, who wouldn't think until after he'd done stuff. So Zeus figured out how to trick him. He made a gift of a beautiful woman, Pandora, who had a mysterious box, and nobody knew what was inside the box. And Pandora was gifted high level of curiosity. And she was then given to go visit Epimetheus, who immediately fell in love with her. And she had her own room, and she couldn't withhold her curiosity, and she opened up the magic box, and out of it flew all these problems for mankind. And then at the bottom of the box, though, luckily there was hope. And that's sort of the story here. So these are 2 paintings. This is by John William Waterhouse, and this is by Pigar. Okay, and so I think it's a little bit funny that, just like in the Bible, the person who unleashed the problems was blamed on Eve, the woman. In Greek mythology, it also gets blamed on the woman, Pandora. So, anyways, all right. We talked about how in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, it sounds like a woman wrote that instead of the Grimm brothers, and she's blaming it on the 7 annoying habits of her husband, the dwarf names. Okay, a couple more points related to this. So, it's been my experience that patients seem to enjoy going to a hospital for diagnostic tests. The reason I say this is if you go to any hospital in the United States, there's always like a river of patients lined up in the morning just waiting to go for all their tests, for CAT scans, for blood tests, colonoscopies, ultrasounds, MRIs, you name it. And they talk to each other. And it reminded me of the pilgrims going to Canterbury for a pilgrimage. Like it's a bit of an adventure, a story to tell their friends, sort of a fun little thing. And don't get me wrong, I realize a lot of them it's not that fun. But what I'm trying to say is tons and tons of patients every day go for all this stuff everywhere. On the other hand, you try telling a patient, I think you need to become 100% low fat, whole food, vegan, low salt, no meats, no sweets, no alcohol, no tobacco. They go, no way, I'm not doing that. No way. I'd rather die than stop eating meat. That's the most common types of responses I hear from that advice. And then going for colonoscopy. Lots of people go for colonoscopy. I know I'm friends with doctors who do colonoscopy, and they're pretty smart, talented docs. But what I'm trying to say is, like, what do I do personally? I agree with McDougall. What I do is by eating a low-fat, low-sodium vegan diet, I get my risk of colon cancer is so low that I don't need to screen. Once you decrease the pretest probability so that it's so low that the likelihood of finding a false positive is higher than a true positive, then you don't need to do the test, okay? The risks are small, but there are some risks, and why take them if your risk of the cancer is so low? Now, if you have blood coming out of your stools, then that's another story. Then you're at higher risk for having cancer, and you're anemic. That would be a higher risk. But I'm just telling you, I don't go for any of this stuff anymore. I did go for it initially because my mom had died of colorectal cancer. But once I realized I could just lower my risk on my own, then I don't need to go back for this test. And I'm actually getting at a bigger message here. And here it is. If you look at United States compared to Japan, let's say this is through the 1950s through 1985. Even though the Japanese were smoking more than the Americans had way higher risk of lung cancer. What I'm saying is it's because of the high-fat diet. It's thought to be the most likely reason for that. And it's the same thing with New Guinea. They're smoking like chimneys, but the United States had over 6 times, oh, here it is, United States lung cancer. They had more than 6 times as much lung cancer as Papua New Guinea. So the point I'm saying is the smart thing to do is just lower your risk by don't do things like don't eat a high-fat diet, like we talked about. Eat only plants. Don't eat any animal protein. These things really make a big difference. These heal a lot of diseases. These give you a much better chance of not getting cancer or preventing cancer from progressing. So that's where the big reward is. But I know that, so this is where I'm always interested. How can I reduce my exposure to toxins? How can I reduce my exposure to, harmful things? And the other thing I said it before, and this is big time true. I think the vegan community has done a fantastic job of teaching people about low-fat, low-sodium vegan diet. And also I think this whole high-fat vegan stuff is a big fake. I think that's a big lie. So there's a lot of people out there saying, oh, it's okay to eat all these high-fat plant foods, and it's okay to eat, this caffeine and MSG and all this other garbage. I think that's a big mistake. But the biggest mistake the vegan community makes, in my experience, is no one is talking about these toxins. And I know why. It's not popular to criticize stuff. And I think if you're running a business, you don't want to be, labeled, oh, Mr. Negative, oh, criticizing, F- in the water, criticizing soy, which is a big fake joke. But you know what? For me, it's just a hobby. I don't care. I'm the bad boy of vegan diet. I'll tell you the truth. And I'm telling you, this is the big issue. The new stuff they're putting on fruits, learning how to avoid that, that's a major, major, major important thing to do. Notice how almost no one's trying to help you do that. It's not that easy to figure out what fruits are safe to eat and what other foods that stuff might be on. Okay, so anyways, this is the big issue right here. And this is what makes a difference. Avoiding these toxins and going the low-fat, low-sodium vegan route. I think that might be the last slide there. Yeah, so anyways, hope that was helpful.